Hello and welcome to another weekly update. I hope you're keeping well. A couple of interesting things happened this week actually, which we're going to go through. A couple of blog posts I managed to get out in kind of response to that. So yeah, let's get into it. It's an interesting time. It's kind of summertime, so things are a little bit quieter. It's also right at the start of Microsoft's financial year. I think I've spoken about that before. So the kind of pace of change is slower, but definitely things are still happening, and work is still getting done, and code is being put out. So that's kind of that's really good to see. All right, first thing to talk about is to do with Azure Communication Services. And as you know, I've been doing a series of blog posts all about Azure Communication Services and helping sort of people get started developing using ACS. Some new functionality just came out actually for Azure Communication Services. So I've added to the Learn ACS series of blog posts with a new day. So it's day 16. And it's all around diagnostic network and media messages. What is this? So basically when you've connected a call in Azure Communication Services, using the client, whatever that call might be. It might be a peer-to-peer call to another ACS user. It might be a group call, or it might even be a Teams interop call into a meeting. Once you've done those things, you can actually subscribe to messages about the client's network connection or the media stack. And the intent here is to give you visibility of the sorts of things that cause problems. So for instance, talking whilst the microphone is muted is it's an indication that there's a problem. Poor network, again, indication there's a problem that, a user impacting problem. And there's lots and lots of these types of messages. You can now subscribe to get notified about them, and Azure Communication Services will notify you when those things happen in your code so that you can do something about that. Now, you might use that to display a nice message to the user. You may just choose to ignore it and log it. It's entirely up to you, but the point is you can kind of subscribe to those changes. So let me show you. This is the blog post I put together. I'm not going to go completely through it, but the interesting things to kind of pull out really. There's both, like I said, there's both network and media. There's a couple of different types that kind of come through that you can get told about. If you want the full list of all the different types of messages, there's a link here to the call Diagnostic section, which is links to the documentation page, Microsoft Docs page. And you can see here, if I zoom in, if I zoom in a little bit, I was hoping to sort of show you all the different messages, if I can get the zooming right. But we'll see if I'm able to do that, because every time I try and do that, it just seems to completely change the let's have a look. We'll get there. Hang on. Call features extension. So it's down here, it's way down here, it's right here. We go. Right, so there we go. Things like no network, relays not reachable, a whole bunch of network quality stats, but also these media ones are really interesting. So speaking whilst the microphone is muted, this is the one that you see in Microsoft Teams quite a lot. This is a really good one actually to have access to as somebody, if you're writing an Azure Communication Services client, having access to that is huge, because now you can do those same things of, it looks like you're trying to talk, but your microphone is muted. You can prompt the user in the same way that the Teams client does. So that's really nice. Camera freeze stuff, camera start failing, cameras timing out. Again, cameras, these USB devices can be a bit flaky. Yeah, it's really nice having the access to some of these messages. It means you can provide a much nicer experience to the user, a much more kind of customized experience to the user, and just a more polished product that you're building on Azure Communication Services. So this is really good to see. You can build this in today. So go check that out. If you've got an ACS solution that you're building, then consider adding these in. It will, I think, provide a really nice kind of set of capabilities for your application. All right, next thing to talk about. Okay, so this is a bit of a rant. Let me just share the screen so you can see my rant. Stop saying Microsoft Teams is being rewritten from Electron to React. Okay, so what is this? So obviously this harks back to the news that Microsoft Teams is being sort of rewritten, and this came out of the news from Windows 11. There's a whole load of nuance there, so it's Teams Personal, not the sort of business side of things that's going into Windows 11 first, and a whole lot of other things. But I hear lots of people saying that Teams is being rewritten from Electron to React, and that's just not true. So I wanted to put this blog post together just to explain the things that are happening and why it's confusing. Because if you're not completely in this as a developer, you might miss these nuances. And there's a few things that are happening, and there's two separate rewrites happening. The one from Electron and the one to React. And they are two very separate things that are happening. But it's worth understanding both of them because they're both interesting. And so that's what this blog post is for. So if you think if you think Microsoft Teams is being rewritten from Electron to React, then please go and read this blog post. If you hear people saying it, send them to this blog post. It's interesting to understand what is going on, but it is not that. That doesn't make any sense technically. Those two technologies are so very different. You can't really replace one with the other. So that's not what's happening. So that's the reason for the blog post. So ranty blog post, apologies. But yeah, might be useful if you come across somebody telling you that Teams is being rewritten from Electron into React. Okay. Other things. So there's been an update to the Microsoft Graph for the calls that make and update Teams meetings. So you can use Microsoft Graph to create a Teams meeting. You can use it to update a Teams meeting as well once it's been created, and you can use it to get information about a Teams meeting. There's been some new properties that kind of line up with additional capabilities that you can now find in Teams around being able to control the attendee experience very sort of specifically by disabling things like the ability for attendees to turn on cameras, turn on microphones, allow chat. Some of this has come out of the education space as well, but also sort of chat and also what are called teamwork reactions, which are when you're in a meeting, being able to kind of do the applause, do the thumbs up, do the heart stuff, all those kind of things. So you can control when you're creating your meeting, you can control whether those things are enabled or not. They've been around in beta for a while. I think I found them in the code base in kind of April, May time. So it's really nice to see them promoted up to GA now. So the reason it's good to see them, by the way, going from beta to GA is the thing that lets you use them in production. When they're in beta, you can't really use them in production. There's no support, and they might change very quickly and leave your application exposed to errors. So having them in GA means that developers can rely on them. They can use them in their solutions. For solutions that need this kind of granular control and more restrictions applied to meetings, this is a really good thing. So you can go and check those out now. They're in the Graph documentation for the V1, not just for the beta. So yeah, you can go and check those out. You can check the blog post out as well for the full details of all the things they are. So, yep. Again, like I say, it's nice to see these things going from beta to GA. It kind of shows progress as well. Yeah, it's nice. All right, finally, a little bit of kind of interesting news concerning Microsoft Teams panels. So if you don't know what these are, so Microsoft Teams panels are the things that go on the outside of meeting rooms and kind of give you an indication in the physical world, give you an indication of what's going on with that meeting room online. So tends to like free busy information, whether or not the meeting room is taken and booked for a online meeting or a in-person meeting. And they integrate really nicely with Microsoft Teams. They're assigned a Teams resource account, and that's how they sort of work. There are a few partners that do them. So Yealink do them, Crestron do them. But the big news, the reason for writing this blog post is that it's now possible to display third-party applications in these panel systems today. So that's something that if you've already got a third-party Teams application, you can consider whether or not you're able to display it in a panel system like this. There's a lot of restrictions, so it has to be a static tab application. So that your application has to expose a static website tab. So it's not bots, it's not messaging extensions, it's not anything else like that. It's not an in-meeting experience, crucially. It's not none of those things. It's just a plain static tab that displays website content. And that's the website content that will then be available displayed on these panels. Now they are touchscreen, so you have the potential to make it two-way and interactive. So there are definitely things you can do. So for instance, booking additional services like food and drink, IT support, cleaning services, whatever else it is. That might make sense for, kind of really large organizations that have lots of these rooms and need to run them kind of efficiently. Then having all this information, it might be health and safety information, first aid information, who to contact if the kit doesn't work, all of these things, they sort of make sense for the type of enterprise that might buy into these panel systems. What I did like actually is the kind of clever way that they're administered, because as an administrator, how do you enable these apps for these panels? Well, actually, it's done using the Teams Admin Center in very much the same way that you assign applications to users. Because these panels have resource accounts, you can place them into Teams app setup policies in just the way that you place users into Teams app setup policies. So by doing that, actually, you can use the existing tools that are in the Teams Admin Center to roll out and also to pin applications to specific Teams panels, and those can be very separate from the policies that you use for users. So you don't need to roll out these kind of services to users just to get them in your meeting rooms, and vice versa. You can keep the two very separate with different policies for different groups of accounts. So I think this is nice. It's quite a niche requirement, I suppose, for organizations, but for those that are using panels and want a way to present additional information, I think it'll be really welcome. All right, that's everything from me. Whatever it is you're doing this week, have a great week. So interesting. I think it's going to be an interesting week coming up. Again, probably not loads of news, but we're going to start to ramp for conference season, and I'm going to be talking about that a bit next time, I think. Look out for that. Other than that, have a great week, whatever it is you're doing, and I will talk to you again next time.